Well, okay, let's start. Hey everyone. So this event we're going to discuss what has been added recently to Orcs, but feel free to ask any questions or like even if it's been covered in past events, if it's something is still unclear or is more detailed, any questions is welcome. Otherwise, what I have on my agenda today, I'm going to go through it very quickly. It's talk about the new memory-based resource type, um, talking about the fact that now we can use literal positions and pivot overrides with ignore from parents, which was not supported before. There's a new way to find the child, like in object hierarchy, you can find easily, more easily at least, children um, based on their name and like a very simple syntax. There's been an update on the local system, so that I don't know if it's say local or local probably. So we don't need to provide the language list anymore. And we can add language on the fly, which was not supported before then. We can also easily save and load the setup for um, the language selection. And the language selection can be done on a group base so that you can have like a different language for your text and for your audio and visuals. And all this can be easily saved and loaded. We're going to talk about the affixes, so the new easing curves, the new Bezier and Catmull-Rom splines, the new Unbound affixes, and also the little additions that were made to the shader time parameter. So with the wraparound and the fact that we can apply an FX directly in config on a shader parameter. We're going to show an example of postponing an object deletion, like to add like a disappearing effect or something like this, everything in config again. I'm going to touch upon like new modification and tweaks that have been done to color literals. And we can mention things like we can now save and load input configurations as well. And there's a bunch of small additions that we can get to at some point. So let's start with the memory-based resource type. So I'm pretty sure that most of you are not going to use it. However, it's very convenient for me to be able to embed resources inside Orcs directly without having to carry them on the side. For example, Orcs embeds the default fonts and now the logo as well. So those are historically in the past, the default font was like uncompressed data that was embedded inside the executable. It was 112 kilobytes of data. And it was manually uploaded onto a texture, whereas now it's just like a resource that is available from memory and that allows me to use any file format like I would do with any resource. So right now the font is encoded as WebP, and instead of being 112 kilobytes, it's slightly under 2 kilobytes. So we gain 110 kilobytes in the size of the binary. And that allowed me also to include a very high definition of Orcs logo if you ever need it. It's part of Orcs itself now, and it's another 2 kilobytes of memory and 1.5 kilobytes of memory that's been used. It's a 1920 times 1080 image with the logo. And in the future, I might add a few convenience resources like this. But for people, I know that in the past we had someone wanted to work on, it's not an emulator, but they wanted to make like an old game from the 90s and make a newer version using the data from back then. And they wanted to know how they could like upload all the resources in the original format at runtime, not only for texture, but for sound and so on and so forth. It was a very manual process. They had to like um, they had to decode those resources and then use the display or the sound API to be able to upload those at runtime. But now they can actually just write a resource type so that they can access like as a regular resource and use the memory resource type to point it to a memory buffer. The only requirement for this, so there's a single function. It's called aux resource. Actually, let me find it because I need to get there. Oh, my notes are in the way, so putting my notes away. Yeah. And if we are going to the, oh, it's a bit small. Sorry about that. Include if we go to the core and go to resource. At the very end of it, we can see there's a new addition called aux resource set memory resource. And basically, you give the name of the resource. That's how people can address the resource, and it will work with any resource API that we have right now. So, same way you can use it like in your config, or you can call any command or function of our resource using that name, and you just provide the buffer and the size of the buffer, and that's it. The only requirement is that this buffer needs to remain valid as long as you've been setting the memory resource. To unset the resource, all you have to do is pass the same name, and you pass either the size at 0 or the buffer at null. If any of this is 0 or null, then the memory gets unset, and then you can do whatever you want with the content of the buffer. But before then, you are responsible to keep that buffer live, and it's written here. Important, the content of the buffer is required to remain valid until the resource has been successfully unset. No internal copies will be made. So it's really for performance reason, especially if you have like very large resources or something like this. We don't want to make copy. You already have it live. You just need to keep it live as long as you want to access this resource. So let's create a new project, and we're going to demonstrate this. So init. Oh, something about init. If we look at the help for init, let me make it a bit more readable, like this. If we look at the help of init, we see that in the past only the C++ was by default activated, but now you have the bundle and is there another one actually? Yes, for the bundle. And yes, for scroll. Okay, so basically scroll and bundle now are activated by default when you create a new project. It's because scroll is very, very convenient, and I really recommend using it for binding C++ object to their config counterpart. And the bundle, if you want to distribute your game and you want to be able to bundle your data in either inside your executable um, or as separate packages, binary packages that are both encrypted and compressed. I would also recommend always using it when distributing your game, especially because it can discover your resources automatically, and it's just like a simple call with a command line parameter to generate the bundle. It's very fast. It's been covered in its own live session in the past, but yeah, those extensions are really like a must-have when using aux, so that's why they are on by default. If you do not want them, you can always turn them off by writing minus. So like if I were doing, oops, init my project, and if I didn't want the bundle, I just say minus bundle, minus from, that it would be like before. So I would have neither the bundle nor scroll there. But that's not the case. So let's create live. I'm not even sure how to call it. So let's call it live 10 because I'm really not, I'm not sure how to call it. So let's see this project. There we go. And we're going to open it. So I'm going here, file, open project, solution. There we go. And it's in my D live and live 10. Yeah, let's build it. And as usual, let's make our modification for the streaming environment. Not sure where I'm going here. So left hand display. We want screen. I believe I was going in 1080p every time. I'm not even sure. Screen height. Oops. And 80. Monitor second one, I think. And then we have the console font scale. Let's see if it works. Okay, it's definitely in the right place, and the console is legible. So we're good. Okay, so here we can see that it's still using an external logo. I kept it for now, just so that it actually creates the the texture folder. I might replace it with some kind of other object in the future, but now the logo is actually part of org, so we don't need that texture. So let's actually show it. So let's open the folder and let's go into data and texture. So if we remove the logo, and here we can reference it by its name. Oh, actually, you know what? Before we do this, let's not create this, and let's do this to be able to see that we have resources that have been set inside Orcs. So if we do resource locate, I want to locate the texture for the font. It's Orcs font default, if I'm not mistaken. And you can see it's in the new mem type of resources. It's there, it's encoded as a WebP, but because it's been loaded, I can also find the texture. So texture find. If I look for Ox font default, you can see that it's here, and I can actually even save it back. So texture save. We want to save it as I don't know, like a test.png. And if I go back to here and I go to the bin folder, you can see that we exported the the font, which is like a bit small here. It's not very legible, but it's here. So doing this, in the same way that we found the font, we can find the logo. So it's Orcs texture logo, and you can see we do have that resources, but right now there's no texture associated to it because we haven't used it. So it's just a resource that's available, but as long as you're not using it, well, it's not being loaded as a texture. So texture find Orcs texture logo not found because we're not using it. So going back here, instead of using logo WebP, we can use Orcs texture logo. And if we start, it's going to work, except that the texture, oh no, it's the same size, so it's working. And now if I were to try to find the texture, it's in memory and I could do whatever I want with this texture. The resource is still available. Even if I were to modify this texture, I can always find the original content from the resource. I'm not sure why you would want to do that, but it's an option. So right now, there's only two embedded resources, the default fonts and the logo texture, but in the future, I might add any useful ones. We'll see. It's very easy, and if you need to do the same thing on your end, like having data coming from other ways than the traditional file system or things that are supported by orgs, like the bundle, or these kind of things. If you're fetching data from somewhere else, you do not have to decode it yourself and upload it manually into Works as a texture, as a sound, as whatever you need. You can just point it as a resource as long as it's in memory, and with the function we've seen earlier, which is, oh, I closed the project, which is Aux resource set memory resource. That's it for the memory resource. Any question on that topic? I take that as a no. Let's see. So going back to my notes. Next topic is talking about literal position and pirate overrides in our work with IgnoreFromParent. That was not the case back then, so let's do it like our scene. We're going to add an object container. So I did not prepare anything. I will likely make some mistakes. Bear with me. Hopefully not too many. So we're going to create a container. It's going to its own graphic. Texture is going to be pixel, and size, I don't know, like 400, 200, and color is going to be red. So if we do this container, we should not see the logo, but just our rectangle, and we've seen it, and just want to center it by vertical center. So we have a nice container here. And if we wanted to place our logo as a child list, object, let's place logo. There we go. And if we wanted to place this one at, let's say, I don't know, like bottom right, we want our top right to match the bottom right or something like this. So let's remove the angular velocity for now. And we're going to say that position, our top right is going to match the bottom right of the parent. There we go. So the top right of the, maybe the logo I will scale it a bit now. Top right is matching the bottom right of the parent, and that's the case here. Let's scale it down a bit. There we go. Okay. If we were to use IgnoreFromParent before, you would have like a message telling you that it's likely not going to behave the way you wanted. It was because it was not really supported. This has changed recently, and now you can ignore anything from the parent. So let's say I want to ignore the scale. So still positioned correctly, and if I were to modify like the parent, so object, find, not find child, container, and change the scale of the parent, let's say we want it 0.5. Oops. You can see that the scale has changed, and the scale of the child hasn't changed because of the IgnoreFromParent. But it was correctly placed at the beginning, and no matter what you give for like let's say I want an angle or rotation, it's going to be an arbitrary number. I want the scale to be, I don't know, like 2 and 3. I want change its position slightly. And the logo here, we haven't changed anything. I want to ignore more than that, like from the parent, I want to ignore the scale and the rotation, so it will remain like horizontal, right? And I still want to have my top right to match its bottom right, and we're even going to give us a position, rotation here, so minus 32, arbitrary again. And we should see that, okay, I turned it too much, so it's off screen, my bad. It's still off screen because of the scale. Okay, let's not do a scale that big, like 1.2, 1.5. There we go. So the bottom right of the parent still match the top right of the child, no matter all those parameters, no matter what ignore you want to do, it's always going to match perfectly. And it supports like the offset as before, and to show you that it works with any other things. Let's say I want to align my middle left to the middle right with an offset of -10. we have the middle left of my object that match the middle right here with an offset of -10. So the -10 is probably around here, which match about like the, so it's not the most obvious one because of the color and the fact that it's behind. Let's actually put it in front. There we go. See, we are probably -10 inside, and that's where we match left and right. So now you can use literal position, literal pivotal rights, no matter the configuration from IgnoreFromParent, which would be very handy if you need to position things like in the UI, in the HUD, or any hierarchy. Yeah, that was it for this line. Any question on this?
I think everybody's following so far.
All good. Let's talk about the new find child, find own child. So before, when you wanted to be able to find children, either you would have to like store a config variable where you keep the GUID of the object to you can easily retrieve it, or you would have to go through like get child and loop through the number of get siblings until you arrive to the right one. Now there is an easier way to do this. Let me actually pull the description. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for this one. Let me find it. Where is it? Okay, so that should be the description here. There we go. I'm going to copy the text description here and I create a new buffer. Not easily. Let's put it at the end. So you can find objects inside the frame of the owner hierarchy of an object by providing a path. The path is just the name of the object separated by a period, and the path can contain a wildcard to match any level depth. You can also use subscript to select the nth object. So actually it's n plus 1, it's 0 indexed. And something very important that is not obvious, the order for like the subscript is in the creation order for the own children and the reverse creation order for the frame children. And that comes from how internal hierarchy are stored and handled. It's not something that's been made just for that function. It's just how it is organized internally in arcs. So it's something that you have to be aware of. So when you index for the own children, it's going to be in the creation order, and for the non-owned, so like for this one is going to go in creation order, this one is going to go in reverse creation order. So it's important to know.
We do have a
And
question from Snake Eye.
yeah,
They ask, is object.findNext able to find all config created objects? Example, object.findNext scene. Usually I set an ID and find objects via that number.
so let me read it because I got the beginning but not the end of it. So you can't find any object with find next. However, if you have multiple objects with the same name, you're going to have to iterate, right? So I set an ID and find object by the number. So it's a very it's an interesting way of finding an object if you have a unique object. But let's say if you have 100 object of type I don't know enemy, you're going to have to call a number of time find object until you find the correct one, and you better know which index is going to be. So find next that's why there's no C function for find next and just a command. It was meant more as something to execute in the console. It's more like a debug thing. It's like I've used it earlier, right? Remember, I found the container when we're running. We can look at the history. Yeah. So find next, I found the container. It's just so that I can get the GUID at runtime. But the purpose of find next was really more for a debug command. It can be useful but usually when you have a unique object, it's much better to store its ID in the config section using onCreate. And it's also much more efficient than using FindNext itself. So yeah, the idea of FindNext is that it's made for like a debug convenience. And if you look at the documentation, you can see that there's a second parameter that is optional. And if you give it, it allows you to iterate on multiple objects. So let's say I want to create, I'm going to create a second container. Create container. So the second container has this ID. So now if I do object find next, and if I look for the container, you can see this is the first container that's been found. But now if I call the function again with the ID of the first, I'm going to go to the next one. And if I were to do the same thing with the second one, then there's no more container, so we can add nothing here. So yeah, that's the idea behind find next. Find child is really to locate something inside the hierarchy that you know exists. And if you have like a deep hierarchy and you want to find something at level 3 or level 4, there's a shortcut in order to be able to do this. So that's the convenience part of it. So here there's a couple of examples. If we were to do get child, if we have like first name, which is here higher dot lower, it's going to find a direct object of my PST object. It's going to find the first one that's named higher. When it finds this object, it's going to look into the children of that object, and it's going to find the first lower object inside one. So find the first child named lower of the first child named higher of PST object. Here it's the same thing, except that we have a dot star in the middle, and that is going to find at depth 1 an object called higher. Then no matter how deep it's going to be under that higher object, it's going to find the first one called deep. So it can be at the next depth, it can be 5 depths further, it can be anywhere, it's still going to match it. If you do it directly with star, I mean that is going to find an object named other at no matter which depth it is, and it's going to return the third one. So remember, it's a 0 index. So 0 would be the first one, 1 would be the second, and 2 is the third one. So it's going to find the third one no matter at which depth in the hierarchy that is named other. So that's also helpful. And if you want to find like the second the second child of a matching object, you can put it like this without a name. So basically, here it's going to match the first child higher, and inside the direct children of higher, it's going to return the second one. And let's try it. I don't really have a very interesting hierarchy, so let's add a couple of things there. So we're going to remove the sound from here. We're going to have, last time we're just going to remove it so that it stays here. We are going to have a container with 2 logos, why not? And each logo is going to have just one. Okay. So if we go to our container here, I can now do find child. And if I want to find the first child, if I pass this, it gives me this, which is the first logo. If I wanted to find the second child, you can see the ID is slightly different. And this is still a logo, but it's a second one. So get name, it's second logo. If I were to find the third child, there's none. So it will tell me there's none. Now, if I want to find the sound, if I want to find the first sound, and I don't know at which depth it is, I don't know the depth, and I want to find the first sound. So sound 0. It's the same thing as writing just sound. Sound or sound bracket 0 is the same thing. It's the first one. So here you can see we find the first sound. And this one, if I get its parent, it should be the first logo. So let's verify it. The first logo is 4040F, and yeah, that's the first one. So the first sound is the child of the first logo. If I wanted to find the second sound here, you can see that it's a different ID, and if I get its parent, it's the second logo. So 20F is the second logo here. So that was the second logo. So this allows you to like easily manipulate objects in your hierarchy as long as you know their name or their position in depth or their order of creation. It's a much easier shortcut than having to call, like for example, if I wanted the second sound, I would have to call first on my container. I would have to call get child, then get sibling to get to the second logo. Then I would have to call get child to find the second sound. So that was very cumbersome. Now you can just use path for direct referencing. And there's a last thing is that if I put -1, it will minus any value, honestly. Only -1 is supported, but if you put -3, the same thing as -1. It's going to send you the last one. So here in this case, -1 should return the same as 1. And you can see it's the case, 30F, 30F. It's just if we had like 3 and not 2, which we can easily do by adding another logo. So each sound is a child of a different logo. Now if I found sound, it's 30F. If I were the last one, sorry. And if I look at the first one, it's 70. The second one is 50. And the third one, is the last one, is 30F. There is no fourth one. So yeah, so -1 can be useful if you want to get the last one. There is no way to get the second to last or third to last. It's only the last one. So for now. That is for addressing objects in hierarchy. Any question on that topic? I'll take that as a no. Okay, so let's remove a bit this, put it back as it was, and removing this. So let's talk a bit about Locale. Before, I don't know, a couple of months ago, you had to specify the language list in your Locale. Let's say I want English, French, German. And then we need to have like the section of each of them. And then you have your keys inside them. So I know, like hi, bonjour, hi is uh, this is not necessary anymore. It's still supported. So if you have a language list, it's going to behave as before, which means that it's going to know all about all those languages, and it's going to do the first one as default language. However, before a couple of months ago, if you wanted to add language on the fly, let's say you load a resource like a new config file uh, coming from, I don't know, like a network resource or something like this that you didn't have at the beginning of the game, you would not be able to add the language on the fly, and that was a limitation. Now you can add language on the fly. They don't even need to be created in config. I can create them at runtime. I can add any. It's as flexible as any other like config-based system. However, if I want to define a default language, the new key is called language. And if I do en, it would be, say, like, let's say it's French by default. So now if I start this and might not find the way, there we go. And if I say local, I want to get the string for I, you see that by default it's French and it's going to say bonjour. But let's say that now we want to add a new language. Let's say we're going to add Basque. So I'm not even sure what to name it. Let's call it BA and say that I is Agur. And we're going to select the language Basque, which is BA. And now if we go back and get the string hi, you can say that it's find Agur. So we added a new language on the fly by just setting it in config and selecting the language. So if you select a language, it's just going to add it if it doesn't already know it. However, if it knows it, it will keep it in memory. The reason for that is that we can save the list of language and all the pre-selection. So remember that now we can actually select language per group. So this, what I did here by selecting language Basque, it's the default language. So by default, if you don't have an override per group, it's going to be the language for everything. So it's going to be the language for the textures, language for the text, language for the sounds. However, if we look at the locale, and if we look at the select language, we can see that now we can also specify a group. And we've seen it in the past live stream. I can select like a different language for the text and the sounds, for example. And this is going to be remembered, and the list of language is going to be remembered, so that when you save, I don't know if you can, no, you cannot do it from here. If you save all your information, there is a function for saving it. It will remember all the selection of the user for all the different groups separated. So yeah, that's a change for Locale. Any question on that topic? I take that as no. Actually, you know what? Let's open Visual Studio. And I will keep Ox. And if we go to the locale, there we go. And if you go to the function here, there is no API for loading and saving. However, everything is stored in config that we can retrieve the language list. So that's probably something I should have done. So here we don't have a language list. But if I run it, and if I'm not mistaken, because I don't remember for sure, but if I get local language list, and actually not get, but config get raw value, that's French, because it's the only language it knows right now. However, if I were to select, so local, select language, I want to select the language German for, well, just German. And now if I do local get string, and if I want high, and you see it's Guten Tag, and now if I get the language list, you can see that both French and German. So when you serialize your save game, all you have to do is serialize the local section, and you will have all the info in this. And as long as you reload it, it will reset all the parameters as they were with all the content of your specific group and so on and so forth. So there is no like separate API for local save, local load. It's just saving the content of the local section, and that's all your local section, and that's all you have to do. But it's very friendly for saving profiles now, which was not the case until recently. Okay, so let's talk about affixes. Before we talk about affixes, let's talk about some like postponing the deletion of an object and an effects on it. So let's remove a bit of this. Let's just put the logo here and clean a bit all this mess. There we go. And we can remove it. Oh, no, not the affixes, sorry. So, there we go. Okay. So, if I didn't mess up, we should have the logo. There we go. It's a bit tiny, doesn't matter. Bigger. And I believe originally, not that it matters, but so that we can see it's live. There we go. So if I want to delete this object, and I want it to like fade out or like shrink or something like this, I would have to either add the effects manually and then ask it to delete once the effects is done by setting its lifetime to effects. But if I wanted to not know how an object is supposed to be disappearing, because you might want to make different objects disappear in different ways. All I want to know is delete an object. So like actually, let's find the object first. So the logo, if I were to delete the logo, it's going to be deleted right now. So if you're looking at the structure, you can see that it's not listed anymore. It's not there anymore when you have the scene and camera viewport and the texture default for the font. But the logo is gone and we have no effects. So usually what you can do for this is that you're going to put the effects here. And on delete, you can say, I want to add an effect. But if you do this, it will still delete the object, right? So what I'll do is going to, let me create the effects first. So I'm a bit scattered right now. Let's call it fade out. We're going to inherit from fade in. It's going to take 1.5 seconds. That's perfect. And we're just going to change the start value 0 and the end value equals -1. And yeah, let's do this. Let's just verify it works. So go add effects and fade out. There, in 1.5 seconds disappeared. So now if I wanted to do this upon deletion, as I said before, we could do it like we could add the effects manually and then make the object delete later or on the effects, but it's not very convenient. I will have to know exactly what to apply on any object, where it's better that the object knows about how it should disappear, right? So here, if I wanted to know, if I wanted to say this object, when I delete it, no matter how it's going to be deleted, it's always going to be deleted with an effects, and it's going to be like, I want to execute, add effects onto me, I want to add fade outs, and I want also to set lifetime, and I want to wait for the end of the effects. But if I just do this, it's not going to work. What's going to happen is that if I were to delete, it's going to disappear right away. And it's gone. If we look at the structure, it's gone. Because by default, onDelete will not prevent the deletion of the object. It's already late. It's already deleting. However, onDelete will return the value of the last command executed on it. And if this value is false, it will prevent the deletion. So if I do return false, it's going to prevent the deletion. But here we're going to have another issue, and we'll see that soon. If I delete it now, it's been disappearing, right? And you would expect it to be gone. Oh, but it's still there. The logo is still there, as you can see. It's not gone. The reason for that is that, well, onDelete is going to be called every time it's going to be deleted. So the first time it's going to add an effect on it. And it says now I want you to get deleted when the effect is over. And I return false to cancel the current deletion. When the effect is over, we're going to call delete on it, which will call another onDelete. And we're going to add another effect into it. And we're going to repeat the whole thing. So what you want to do is remove this onDelete. And for this, if we look at this, in the object, you have a set onDelete function. And you can specify, you can either give nothing and it will remove the current onDelete, or you can specify a new, oops, I'm not sure why it happened there. Something scroll, didn't like it. It's probably when it tried to do the circular onDelete at the end. And what you're going to do is just remove the current onDelete. So set onDelete on my cell with nothing. It's going to remove the onDelete. So now it should work. So let's verify we have our logo. We're going to delete it. The logo is still there. And after 1.5 seconds, the logo is still there. Should be gone. Okay, I messed up something. What did I mess up? Object set onDelete. Let me verify this. Okay, so let's find the logo and set onDelete on the logo. We'll remove it and let's delete the logo. Okay, so the set onDelete worked because it's not being executed right now. So why didn't it work this time? Yeah. So here we add the effects. The
Color
other
cycle.
shouldn't matter. Oh, did someone ask something?
The color cycle will keep it alive.
Oh, I'm sorry, the volume is super low. I can barely hear what you say.
The color cycle will keep it
Oh,
alive.
you're right. You're totally right. Thank you very much. Yes, you're totally right. So I would have to remove the color cycle here. Thank you for this. So when adding the FX fade out, we're going to remove FX color cycle. Thank you. And this should work just like that. So let's delete it. And after 1.5 seconds, it's gone. Thank you very much. There we go. Well, hopefully you don't have a color cycle on your object and you won't have to remove the FX running on it. So that was not great for a demonstration, but you get the idea. So basically, you can define how you're going to be deleted, and you can remove yourself, or you can replace yourself with a new different version. So like, if you wanted to have a chain of multiple things, you can just replace your onDelete with the next one. You can even store the next onDelete or something like this, and you can change this on the fly. Let's say if you want to be destroyed differently, if you've been hit by a bullet versus being hit by a rocket, you could define the kind of effects to add. Well, you know how it works, right? It's just an direction. You would retrieve the FX to play or the track to use on delete, and you can store it and retrieve it conditionally. The important part is that we can cancel a deletion by returning false, and we can modify the behavior when being deleted at any time, including when we're being deleted right now. So obviously, if you don't return false, this has no incidence because it's for the next deletion. But it's something good to know. Yeah. Thanks again for the color cycle. Any question on this topic? So let's move on. FX curves. A bunch of curves have been added. So if we look at the creation template, and if we're looking at the FX template, we can see that now in the slots we have new curves, which are basically. Oh, I thought that Catmull ROM. I don't have Catmull ROM yet. I'm just Bezier. So all the easing web um, function. Let me actually illustrate this by finding the web page, easings.net. There are other reference page, but this one is a good starting point. So here you can see all those names and the curve that goes with it, and you can see the behavior. So if you want something like as the bouncing like this, bouncing at the beginning, bouncing at the end, bouncing only at the beginning, or if you want to overshoot and come back, if you want to undershoot first and then go, if you want to go slowly at the beginning but then go faster at the end, or even like more with exponential, like you take a long time at the beginning but then you move fast at the end. All those curves are now supported and with the names that are defined here. So is in sign, is in elastic, is out elastic. All those curves are now supported, and you can use them directly in FXs by just specifying their name. We're going to see how it works. Then the new addition are like for Bezier. And basically, if you want to define like a Bezier curve of your own values, you have to specify Bezier and then the control point for the Bezier curve. So it's a quadratic curve. You have to specify the two vectors that are the control point for that Bezier curve. And there are like web pages that allows you to pre-visualize the control point and the result you can expect when using a Bezier curve, or you can use any editor with a Bezier curve, and you just have to give the coordinate of the control point as a vector. So basically you type Bezier, so you type curve equals Bezier, the first control point and the second control point. And that's how you define the Bezier curve. Whereas for easing, it's much easier. You just say curve equal is in out expo form. The capitalization does not matter. You can follow the one you see on the website. You can use any one. It will always work. It's case insensitive. Okay, we're going to try this, and that allows us to have like more behavior that suits more different situations. Like before then, we could only use a linear triangle, which is basically linear in both directions. Square, sine or cosine, depending on the phase you would use. Smooth and smoother, which are like kind of sine approximations. It's just like smooth transition, but the same transition at the beginning and at the end, whereas with the easing curves, you can have different beginning and different end. So those were a good start, but they were a bit rigid. And if you wanted to have something a bit advanced, you had to combine curves, and it was not always easy. If you wanted, like for example, like a different speed at the beginning and versus the end, like if you wanted to undershoot at the beginning and then like go fast at the end, there was no easy way to do this. Now you have access to all the easing curves, and you can even combine those curves if you want to. It's just been a nice addition to Arcs, and we can showcase it like soon with an FX. But before we get there and the showcase, I wanted to mention that we also have an addition in the type. So the type is on what is going to on what the property of the object is the effect going to be applied. And we add like a lot of things like position, rotation, scale, the color, different color spaces, the speed of the object, the volume, the pitch. But now we have two new ones which are not bound to an object per se. So you can have fx's that run, or you can sample fx's without having them bound to an object. You just define the type of data. There are two of them, float and vector. And actually, if you look at all the object properties, alpha was using a float, color was using a vector, rotation was using a float, position was using a vector, volume was using a float, and so on and so forth. And then optionally, you have to define if it's the kind of operation, if it's an add operation or a multiply operation. And this is important because it will define how the effect is going to behave. For example, if you look at a position, it's going to use an add operation. So like when you say position 2, let's just pick on the x-axis, right? If you go from 0 to 2, well, you're going to move 2 to the right, and it's going to be an addition. So you go starting at 0, and then you add all the increments until you reach 2. However, if you use something as scale, it's not an addition. When you ask for a scale of 2, you expect it to be twice as big, so it's a multiplication by 2. It's not, you don't start at scale 0, which would be like nothing, and end up at adding it. So it's a multiplication. And that's why you have the support for both of them. That implies, of course, the type of operation, but also what is a neutral element. For the addition, it's 0, and for the multiplication, it's 1. And if it's a vector, the addition is 0, 0, 0, and the multiplication is 1, 1, 1. So you can now request for these curves, and you can sample them yourself. So if you go back to the other here, and if we go into, sorry, I'm in the wrong place. It's in the object, and there we go. If we go in the effect, so first you can see that all the Easing curves have been added here. And now we have on top of the apply, where we could apply manually effects, you have two functions, which is getFloat and getVector. It's for sampling effects where you can specify the time. So There are two time parameters. It depends on what kind of result you want. Do you want the delta between two positions in time, or do you want the absolute value of that curve? Both ways are available. So if time is always going to be the current time, but if you do not want a delta, if you want the actual absolute value, you just pass a negative value for the previous time. If you pass a negative or zero value, that works. So zero negative value is going to give you the actual absolute value for that curve at the time you ask for it. If you give like a positive value, it's going to give you the delta between the previous time and the current time, which is how it's applied on object because we sample it every single frame. But for you, it might not be what you want. So you have access to both. And the function here is for like a float parameter, and this one is for a vector parameter. And if you mismatch that with the actual fx, you're going to get orcsnode as a result. So that's for like having fx's that are not bound to an object. And there is a special case of this where we're going to demo our curve. Is that right now on the shader parameters, remember, we have a special parameter that's called time. So if we look at the shader template, if we look at the float one, it could just be a float or it could be a time. And now there are two optional parameters you can pass behind, a float and a template, a fixed template. The float is a cycle. So basically, before that, the time would go from 0 to the infinite, and it will use the age of the object for this. So at the creation of the object, the time would be 0, and then 1 second, 2 seconds, it's in seconds. And it will continue to grow indefinitely, which brings some issues of precision. Like if your object's lifetime is for, let's say, for hours or things like this, you will end up with a much smaller, much worse precision over time. After an hour, you're going to be like at the pixel, depending on the size of your pixel, it's a UV value. If you use that as a UV modification, you're going to have like only 3 digits of precision instead of having the 6 or 7 at the beginning. And that's going to be an issue because if you have like a texture that's over 100 pixels, then you're going to see artifacts when using the time to modify the value of a pixel. The idea here, if you have a cycle, it's just going to wrap around. So basically, it's, if you put like 10 here, the time will go from 0 to 10, and it will cycle back to 0, and so on and so forth. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, and 10 is 0 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on and so forth. So that will allow you to wrap your time, but keep the precision. If you were doing to do a modulo in your shader with the time ever growing, you would lose that precision, and it's not something that you can catch up later. It's lost. So that was an issue, obviously, for long-lasting objects. Now you can keep the same precision by using the cycle, and on top of the cycle, you can actually modify. So by default, it's just linear, right? The time grows always the same amount. So it would be linear time, but if you wanted to make a modification, you would have to apply a formula in your shader code. Now you can actually apply your FX, and you can use any combination of curves you have just to see something different. And a good example, I don't know, it's already 1 hour. So instead of doing it live, I'm just going to copy paste it from the shader. I'm going to reuse something that Gwili made recently because I think it's a good illustration. Call it the shimmer shader, and let me display it. I think I can just go, yeah, like this. You can see it here. So basically, he created a shader that does this kind of effect. And you will see up, that's the white bar that goes across. You can see it's not linear. It's very slow at the beginning, then it accelerates very fast, and then it slows down again. You can see it. And this is based on a curve. And the way he used it is the easing out expo. So very slow at the beginning, very fast at the end. And you would have to have like the code where you listen for the shader parameter, and you would take the current time, and based on that current time, you would ask for the transformation of your FX. So you would have to create your FX outside of it, and you would have to sample it and return it as the value. So you had to write code, right? So here is how the FX is defined. It's like a simple FX, except that it has a curve in and out, expo. And it actually has two curves because there's a weight. It's not cycling all the time. It has a weight between both. Um, and this effects, you would have to create it in code and process the parameter yourself. Now, this can be done entirely in config by just providing the name of the effect. So if on your shader parameter, you provide the shimmer effects, and that you can see here now, that's how it works. This is the shine parameter that's defined for its shader, so that's a shader. And we see a shine progress, which is time, and that back then it wasn't looping, so now it's actually looping with the feature we just saw. So this time here we can define, yes, I want it to loop every 1.5 seconds, and I want it to be transformed through the shimmer effects. And which means that you get these results without any code by just saying that your time parameters is going to be wrapped around every 1.5 seconds, and it's going to be transformed by the shimmer effects. And that's a value you will be able to use directly inside your shader. So this is important when you want to do anything time-based inside the shader. You can actually process this and modify it like that. So sorry, I didn't have time to do it live, but yeah, that's the idea, and you can go check it in the Discord shader forum. And with this, let me check my notes. I think we covered all the main topics. The rest was talking about the fact that now you have commands for saving and loading inputs. They are called input load, input save. That allows you to well, to save and load inputs. So if you want your user to be able to customize their inputs, now you can easily export and import this. There is bodies can object with bodies can now edge. That wasn't the case until recently. So of course the collisions cannot be resolved because the body will just edge by itself, but the entire world cannot like move forward just for that object. So they are able to be edged, meaning that they're going to be able to move even if they have body, just that the collisions are not going to be processed with it. So keep that in mind. What else? Color literals. Before we could only apply color literals for specific places, like for the objects and the graphic. Now you can apply it for any aux properties that expect a color. So like for FXs as well, viewports, the background color, the graphics and the object, of course. But you can also use random now. So like for example, and actually let me copy paste a small. It's going to be the last one. I'm just going to copy paste a small demo I made yesterday using some assets from a previous live session. So let me copy this here, and we're going to do it live. It won't take too long, hopefully. Let me just come here. And here we want to go into data and the texture. And you might recognize this little guy. It's a character. I will put the proper credit and source in the video description. We're just going to copy paste most of its content. So not in aux. Oh, wait, this one? Yeah, this one is aux. Wrong one. Sorry. Back in the live, we're going to go here and we're going to create a hero. And because I already worked on it yesterday, I'm just going to copy paste it. So hero is there. Okay, I think I have everything. Okay. So basically, it's a hero with an animation set that is very simple. It's just a run animation right now. And it's based on the file names we've seen. So sword hero dash one dash run followed by 4 digits. .png, and you can see that it's -1-run and PNG for extension and only 4 digits. This is going to be able to create the entire animation. We're going to run it at about 60 FPS, and just so it runs very fast. The pivot is the center. And on top of this object, so this was something I posted a while back as an answer to someone in the forum, in Discord, sorry, so that we could create like a ghost trail behind an object. And this here is just a generic way of being able to create any kind of sub-hero with the same behavior without having to do it manually every time. It just like basically taking the base name of the object and creating a new spawner that inherits from the hero spawner and a new ghost that inherits from the hero ghost. So basically those are templates that are going to be reused. Like if I wanted to have like John that comes from the hero, it will also inherit a trail that is specific to John. So if I were to change the texture that John used, the hero, the ghost trail of John will also use that new texture and so on and so forth, and the animation set as well. And here in the ghost, there's it's just going to currently ask the main hero what is its animation and what is its time, and it will replicate this on itself. So basically, we get the animation, we set it to ourselves, we get the animation time, we set it to ourselves, and we say, okay, you put the animation frequency to 0, means that basically you freeze the animation. So it just so that we can freeze in time the frame of the animation. And that's a ghost. So every time it's going to be created, I gave it a bit of random offset vertically. It's going to be half the alpha. And here you can see that I have like different colors. Basically, it's between red and green on HSV. And it's just going to last as long as there's an effect on it. And the effect is just we see that we're using an easing out expo. And we're just going to fade out, basically. So if I didn't mess up, and we are going to create another logo, but the hero now. On the hero itself, you'll see something else. On the create, oh, well, let's not do the create. And let's not add the speed. Let's see if it works. Okay, we have a running hero. We see the trails behind it, but it's not very, oh, I should have left that longer. There's like a trail ghost behind it, which is colored in any shade of red to green. I mean, it's Christmas, so might as well do it. And you can see that we spawn it like, I think it's every 0.2 seconds. Yeah. Every 0.2 seconds, we spawn an object that will mimic the current frame of the animation. But to demonstrate this effect, it would be nice if the object was moving. However, if we have the object moving, it's going to run outside of our screen very fast. So like, if we do this, it's gone. We can see the trail, but not for long. So what we do at the creation of the object, we just retrieve the camera and we attach the camera to ourselves. So basically, we are moving at the same time as our object, and we can see the trail behind. So because there's no background, we don't see that we're scrolling, but we are actually scrolling with the object at the same time, and we can see the effect behind. And you can see that each frame is like colored between red and green. And the only thing is that you have to remember how it works in HSV. So this is the U, so we're going between U0 and U033. You have to remember which one is red, which one is green, where is blue on the wheel. Saturation value is it's one everywhere. But what if we were doing something more easy, like I want something between red and green? And usually red and green is expressed in RGB. But now in arcs, if you apply those literals onto an HSV space, it's going to be translated into HSV internally. And same for HSL. So you can use literals for any properties, even different color space on RGB, and you can use them with random. So saying I want a random between green and red is totally fine, and you will see still the color between green and red. And you can mix and match. Like for example, if you don't have like a specific color here, but you want like 6611, that works as well. It's going to go between green and blue. So You can use literals everywhere, even in random, even if it was a step random. Let's say I want only like 3 colors. So like if I put a 0.1 like this for the step between red and red, there are going to be only 3 shades of red and red, and yeah, and that's it. So yeah, so color literals are supported for random expressions and for any color spaces, which is the point of this. And we see like that the dispersion here is not linear. It remains like almost the same opacity for a long time, and then it disappears very, very quickly. That's the is in-out curve. If I were to use a linear curve instead, you'll see that the effect would be very different. It's fading much from the beginning, and it doesn't have the same dynamic, whereas with the new Easing curves, it's like a much nicer effect. There we go. So before, to emulate this kind of things, we would have to wait for a while and apply like a linear toward the end, or like 2 different linears with different curves. It was not as handy of just using the Easing curves. And I think that's about all I have for today. Let me see. The rest was, we already talked quickly about it. So yeah, is there any questions regarding what I just discussed, or any question in arcs like at large, or anything you would like me to discuss? Please let me know.
I think it's really cool that we have access to curves now.
Yeah, it's definitely. I know that Nico, who's been working on both Bua blocks and Destroy, told me that it really changed his life. He's been using them a lot lately, so hopefully that will be helpful for other people as well.
I know I'm going to use it a lot in my animation work now.
Yeah, it's definitely very nice to have like dynamic feelings like we can see here with the trail. Um, and people are used to developing for web right now, so these kind of transitions are expected. So it's a nice addition to the engine. It was just a lot of work because there are 30 curves, but and there was some groundwork to be able to decouple FXs from the object. It took a little while, but I'm happy that we have that now. So that's all I have for you folks today. And thank you so much for joining. And I wish you all a good day, good evening, depending on where you live. And see you next year. Bye, everyone.